Episode 4, Sweet Daughters of Mine. Every moment matters, is precious. Well, back to my memory fragments. It's easy to fall prey to feeling like a victim. I have always refused to be a victim, and so it has been incredibly important for me to hold on to positive things. My daughters were those cornerstones to my life and purpose. Despite tremendous abuse and heartache over what happened to my daughters and to me because of human insecurities and pettiness, I resiliently rose each time to find another day to be there for my daughters. There were special times with Amanda and Brooke that I hope to cherish, always, so long as my mind can remember them. Back then, things were simple and inexpensive, though they were not cheap. But everything was precious. My daughters will always be, like Guns N' Roses sang, sweet daughters of mine. As I reminisce about good times with my daughters, I am reminded how those positive experiences were my beacons that motivated me to move forward, always, and not dwell on past troubles or suffering or pains. It made me think of how important small things can be in our lives. They give us hope and strength when we might otherwise wane or fall. I am reminded of the divine debate that I conceived for my game Escape from Hell. In it, I had conceived of a narrative between God and the devil, fabled as the divine debate, where they argued if humankind was inherently evil or not. One topic rose above the rest, and although it did not pertain directly to the human soul or its righteousness, it was pivotal to the debate. Instead, the topic revolved around the notion that it only needed one spark of goodness to ignite the hearts and souls of others to return to goodness and righteousness, thus returning to the light. And in doing so, once lost souls would turn bright and joyous again. Well, that sounds like all happy times, doesn't it? The contrarian position, of course, is darkness. The contrarian view alleged it was only a matter of time until something so horrible would happen to those few good and faithful people that they too would ultimately be crushed and lose hope and their faith. And when that happened, all of humanity will have fallen and be damned to hell. So how does thinking of good times with my daughters remind me of the divine debate? Those precious positive times were critical to my not giving up on the world. I needed a rung on my ladder that was stable. I needed solid legs on the chairs that I was to sit in. Whatever metaphor or analogy that we use, it was always the same thing to me. I concluded that good things are needed to pave over or bulldoze through the bad things in our lives. Without those positive footholds, it would be easy to succumb to living a selfish and self-serving life at the expense of others. Being evil would be easy and highly lucrative, but it would be at the expense of my integrity, legacy, at the expense of my soul. The divine debate was ultimately about faith. It provided a visual metaphor for the test of faith, a lone match hovering and dancing above oceans of darkness, with their waves reaching upward to strike the flickering match and douse its little flame. The test of faith contended, it only takes one lone match dancing and hovering above oceans of darkness to inspire those that have fallen to darkness to reignite their light and rise up and out of the oceans to rejoin that lone match as a community that will burn brightly and united forever. Or, if one lone wave hits its target's mark, the match will lose its faith and be forever extinguished, and with it, all humankind damned alongside an eternity in hell. At its core, Every individual has within them the power to change those around them, and from them, they would change others, and thus, like a matchbook's marketing campaign, it can change the world. Or like the marketing book, Tipping Point, it is possible to exponentially change the world from a small epicenter with a huge influencer. I recall fond memories of Brooke riding up and down in a merry-go-round like an airplane ride at Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Amanda gleefully rode the planes as well. It was such a nice, uneventful time to spend with my daughters. Simple, sweet, elegant. I wish all memories could be so nice. Another fond memory was when Amanda and Brooke played Strategic Simulations Incorporated, a company, SSI, their computer Dungeons and Dragons games. They were group party role-playing games, or RPGs. The RPG games were complicated, so I simplified them by naming party members after my daughters and me. So there was Brooke, a character, and Amanda, a character. And then there was my character, Big Daddy. That's right, my daughters named me Big Daddy, and I was the biggest, toughest knight in the game. I loved that they saw me as a big, tough knight, even if my name was Big Daddy. Although only in the afternoon, it was nice to go to a pick-it-yourself farm in British Columbia, Canada with my daughters. It was fun to wander the rows of trees and talk about the bushes and the bugs and the berries. Simple, bonding, enjoyable. I do hope my daughters enjoyed it as well. During my stint living in Southern California while working for Interplay and Titus Interactive, I had the opportunity of working with a man named Doug Brandon, who had been both a producer and composer. We'll talk more on that later. In Doug's past life, he worked at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, as a musician for many, many years. I believe he may have been there for over 20 years, in fact, while also performing at nightclubs and bars. And he went on tours. We'll talk about that also later. Of course, I first met Doug at Atari Games and worked with him off and on at different companies and in various contract projects as well. Again, we'll talk more about that later. Sorry for introducing Doug without much of a background here, but his brief background is important for my story about my daughters. Doug had heard my daughters were visiting me in Southern California, and he offered to secure an all-day, all-attraction Disneyland pass for my daughters, Catherine, and myself. It was a wonderful offer, and we took him up on it, of course. Unfortunately, I had contracted a serious flu right before my children arrived, and I was fighting it during their visit. It sucked. I finally had some time with my daughters, but I was so very sick. Undaunted and determined to show my daughters a good time, though, I pressed onward to Disneyland regardless of how sick I was. I had a 105-degree fever. It was hot outside and sunny. I struggled to breathe. I had aches all over. My voice was crackly. It was so bad you could barely understand my words. We had been in Disneyland seeing the sights and going on rides. For me, I felt awful. I tried to be strong and be a man and be their dad. But it was hard. It was extremely hard. At one point, it was too hard for me, in fact. We had entered an area called Toontown, where I spotted an empty bench. An empty bench in Disneyland. It felt like a mirage. But no, it was real. The bench was there, and there was no one on it. Virtually staggering with my fever and delirium, I went to that bench and I laid down across it like a homeless person settling in to spend the night. I wondered how I could go on and be there for my daughters, given how sick and dying that I felt I was. Catherine, though, was an angel. She took care of Amanda and Brooke. She made sure they were attended to and had a good time. She took care of me on the bench, and as we traversed the park for my children later when I was slightly better. But I struggled and often returned to the bench, thankfully empty. From that bench, I vowed My love to Catherine and to my children in my crackly voice as I said, "I love you. It's true." On the day we were set to go to Disneyland, I was too sick. One visit to see my children included our seeing my parents in San Martin, California. My mother and stepfather enjoyed seeing their grandchildren when they were able to. Candidly, they did not go out of their way, though, to see them, but they did like to see and interact with them when we brought them to them. My parents' house was not a place that I wanted to stay in, though, and I always abhorred the idea of Catherine or my children staying there, at least not inside the residence house. We'll talk more about the San Martin hellscape later. My stepfather owned an A-class recreational vehicle, an RV, a giant bus-sized car. We were offered to stay in their RV for the weekend, so it was isolated from the San Martin clan. People that were generally very negative and even hostile or destructive, including my mentally ill eldest sister, who had been convicted of violent felonies. Again, we'll have a lot more about the San Martin hellscape later. We had no incidents during our visit to San Martin this time, and we were able to maximize the daytime with my parents, and the nighttime just with Amanda and Brooke in the RV. Brooke had been struggling to read, and so we went to spend time in the evenings to read together. It was rare that I could actually be a teacher to my children, and I valued every moment and opportunity immensely. I wish deeply that I had more opportunities to spend with my children and to be a mentor and parent for them in person instead of so often from afar and forcibly distanced by their mother. We'll talk more on that later as well. My daughter Amanda overcame strong environmental challenges when her mother moved them to Berkeley, a known liberal and drug-laden area with high crime. Amanda decided on her own to turn things around and push to finish high school and attend Diablo Community College, where she ultimately graduated with an associate degree. And from there, she was accepted to the University of California in Santa Barbara, UCSB, where she learned her bachelor's degree. Catherine and I were fortunate to be able to attend both of Amanda's collegiate graduations. They were conflicted with her biological mother, from the mother's side, also attending. And so my time with Amanda, even then, was limited to at most an hour before and after ceremonies. But regardless of how much time I would have with Amanda and her graduations, I was and I am glad that we were able to be there for her and see her achievements firsthand. And we were able to see her outside of those graduation events, of course. Seeing Amanda is always wonderful for me. She proved herself to be a rock star and obtained a job right out of UCSB as a financial manager, and she rose from there to have people report directly to her. She learned some coding skills to improve the purchasing and invoicing of software, instead of hoping that the maker might someday listen to her requests and update the software as she needed it down the road. Much like Amanda's approach to most things, she makes her mind up and she makes things happen. She wanted a feature in the software that she was using, and so she learned how to change it and she made it happen. Right there, right then. She did it. Amanda owns her solutions. She has iron willpower and talent to make things happen. I was and am proud of Amanda. Throughout my children's childhoods, I sent them tomes of writing in birthday and holiday cards. I would write in every blank spot on the cards and would try to find fold-out cards so there was even more space to write on. I had hoped to impart wisdom or inspiration or a motivation or anything that would improve their happiness or life's insight. I treated my children like adults wherever it made sense, and that included sometimes mature topics on their cards. For example, I would talk about earning money from work or earning from innovations I wrote about saving money so it was there when you might need it, like an emergency or when there was something you really wanted, but could only have it if you had saved the money for it. I warned of premature gratification over delayed gratification for greater rewards. I advised above all investing money to have money so it would make money for you. I explained how checks and loans and credit cards worked. I extolled the importance of truth and honor and integrity, and I praised them and complimented their achievements. I also cautioned against things that I worried about. My birthday and holiday cards were epic, if not legendary, in their content breadth and depth. Amanda surprised me one day. She had saved all of the cards that I had sent her over the many years. It felt good to know that she had valued them enough to save them. And better yet, she shared how much of my messages in the cards had influenced her later in life. She adopted the fiscal responsibility ideas and she made them her own. It also felt good to know that some of my ideas in those cards had lasted and were relevant and impacted her life. During one weekend with Amanda and Brooke, we were talking about dreams and imagination, and I told a tale of a wacky dream I had called The Dull Gray Slippery Man. I do not remember much about my dream, but Amanda was so captivated by the story at the time, she wrote it down. Her imagination was sparked and ignited her own creative juices, and she set about to write her own narrative and updated her own version of The Dull Gray Slippery Man. It went like this. The dull gray slippery man is inside you. It could be lurking inside your mind right now. It could be sitting next to you at any moment. It is always in your shadows. If you are angry with somebody, it is what tells you what to do about it. It is your conscience. If something is wrong, it will tell you what would be right to do. The dull, gray, slippery man is what tells murderers to murder. It is what tells robbers to rob. He is neither living nor dead. Every person has a dull, gray, slippery man inside them. Some are more powerful than others. Some encourage evil and wrong, while others encourage good and right. Sometimes people see their dull, gray, slippery man, though no one else can. Though you may not believe that you can touch your conscience, you can. Your dull, gray, slippery man can be seen, heard, and felt, but only by you. Nobody else. No one else can see yours. He shows himself in different ways, in dreams, in person, phone calls, and other ways you can't even imagine. You and your dull, gray, slippery man share the same thoughts, pains, anger, and confusion. You share the same joy, sympathy, and forgiveness as well. He is a part of you, no matter if he vanishes. If he vanishes, he is still a part of you. He just does not reveal himself again unless he is desperately needed. Even if you cannot see him, he is still there, in your mind, in your heart, and in your soul.